Have you ever walked into a home and immediately felt it, that indescribable sense of warmth, of history, of stories, whispered through every creaky floorboard and sun-faded quilt? A place where time seems to slow, where the air smells like aged wood and lavender, where every object feels like it was placed there not by a designer's hand, but by life itself. That, my friends, is the magic of rustic vintage living. I remember the first time I truly understood this style. It was in my grandmother's farmhouse. The way her mismatched china sparkled in the hutch, how the afternoon light danced across the scars in her oak table, each mark a memory of family dinners and homework sessions and late-night conversations. That house wasn't decorated. It was lived in, layer upon layer of love and practicality and accidental beauty. And that's exactly what we're celebrating today. Welcome to the art of living beautifully, rustic vintage home inspiration. Over the next few minutes, we'll wander through sun-dappled rooms filled with reclaimed wood and heirloom textiles. Uncover the secrets to finding character-rich pieces without breaking the bank, and explore how to blend eras so your home feels curated rather than chaotic. This isn't about recreating a Pinterest board. It's about creating a space that feels like you. Whether you're a longtime vintage lover or just dipping your toes into rustic charm, this guide is for you. We'll cover everything from the philosophy behind this style, why a chip in the paint can be more valuable than perfection, to practical tips, like how to spot a quality antique versus a distressed big box imitation. Consider this your invitation to slow down, to savor the process, and to fall in love with the stories your home can tell. Before we begin, I'd love to know what draws you to rustic vintage style. Is it the nostalgia? The sustainability? The way it feels like a hug at the end of a long day? Drop a comment below. Your stories inspire this community. And if you're as passionate as I am about spaces with soul, hit subscribe and let's embark on this journey together. Now, let's step inside. Segment 1. What defines rustic vintage style? Rustic vintage is more than just a design trend. It's a lifestyle. It's about embracing imperfections, celebrating history, and blending natural textures with curated nostalgia. But what exactly sets this style apart? At its core, rustic vintage design combines the rugged beauty of countryside, living with the elegance of bygone eras. Think exposed wooden beams, chipped paint on an antique dresser, or a well-loved leather armchair that's seen decades of stories. One of the key elements of this style is authenticity. Unlike mass-produced modern furniture, rustic vintage pieces carry character. Scratches, patinas, and even slight damages only add to their charm. Reclaimed wood, wrought iron, and natural stone are staples in this aesthetic. The goal? A space that feels collected over time rather than perfectly staged. Color palettes in rustic vintage homes tend to be warm and earthy. Think creamy whites, muted greens, deep browns, and soft blues. These tones create a soothing backdrop that allows your statement pieces, like an heirloom armoire or a vintage chandelier, to shine. Layering is also essential. Mixing different textures like linen, burlap, and aged metals adds depth and coziness. Another defining feature? Eclectic storytelling. A rustic vintage home isn't about matching sets. It's about blending eras and styles harmoniously. Maybe it's a mid-century lamp sitting on a farmhouse table, or a Victorian mirror against a shiplap wall. The magic happens when these pieces converse rather than clash. So, if you're drawn to spaces that feel warm, lived in, and full of soul, rustic vintage might just be your perfect design language. Up next, we'll explore how to bring this style into your own home, starting with the heart of every space, the living room. Segment 2, Rustic Vintage Living Room Ideas. The living room is where life happens, where we unwind, entertain, and create memories. So, how do you infuse this space with rustic vintage charm? Let's start with furniture selection. A well-loved leather sofa, a distressed coffee table, or a barn door repurposed as a TV console can instantly anchor the room in vintage vibes. Look for pieces with history, whether it's a flea market treasure or a family heirloom. Next, Textiles play a huge role in softening the space. Layer chunky knit throws, linen curtains, and vintage-inspired rugs to add warmth. Don't shy away from patterns, florals, checks, and even faded tapestries can add a touch of nostalgia. Pro tip: swap out modern pillows for ones with embroidery or lace details for an instant vintage upgrade. Lighting is another game changer. Instead of harsh overhead lights, opt for ambient lighting. Think Edison bulbs and wrought iron fixtures, a refurbished barn light, or candle-style sconces. A vintage-inspired floor lamp with a burlap shade can cast the perfect cozy glow for evenings spent reading or chatting. Now, let's talk decor accents. Rustic vintage spaces thrive on curated collections, old books, ceramic jugs, weathered picture frames, and even antique kitchen scales can become statement pieces. Open shelving is a great way to display these finds without clutter. And remember, less is more. Let each piece breathe and tell its own story. Finally, bring nature indoors. A bundle of dried lavender, a reclaimed wood mantle decorated with pine cones, or a terracotta pot filled with wildflowers can bridge the gap between rustic and vintage beautifully. Ready to take this aesthetic to the next room? Let's move into the kitchen and dining area. Segment 3. Rustic Vintage Kitchen and Dining Space. The kitchen is the heart of the home, a place where meals are shared, stories are told, and memories are made. So how do we infuse this space with rustic vintage charm? Let's start with cabinetry and finishes. Instead of sleek, modern cabinets, think distressed wood, open shelving with wrought iron brackets, or even repurposed antique dressers turned into kitchen islands. A coat of chippy white or sage green paint can instantly add that time-worn elegance we love. Countertops and backsplashes are another opportunity to bring in texture. Butcher block counters, subway tiles with a crackled glaze, or even reclaimed brick can create that old-world feel. For a budget-friendly update, consider peel and stick vintage-inspired tiles. They're renter-friendly and totally transformative. Now, let's talk hardware and fixtures. Swapping out modern handles for bin pulls, cupboard latches, or antique brass knobs can make a huge difference. A farmhouse sink, whether a classic white apron front or a copper trough sink, adds instant rustic appeal. And don't forget lighting. A wrought iron chandelier or a cluster of mason jar pendants can set the perfect mood. For the dining area, a reclaimed wood table is a must. Pair it with mismatched vintage chairs, maybe a Windsor, a French bistro chair, and a rustic bench for an eclectic yet cohesive look. A linen table runner, heirloom dishes, and a centerpiece of wildflowers in a mason jar complete the scene. The key? It should feel collected, not staged. Finally, open storage is your best friend in a rustic vintage kitchen. Display your grandmother's ironstone, vintage scales, or a collection of wooden cutting boards. Not only does it add charm, but it also keeps everyday items within easy reach. Up next, we're heading to the bedroom, your personal retreat. Segment 4. Creating a dreamy rustic vintage bedroom. Your bedroom should be a sanctuary, a place where you can unwind, dream, and wake up inspired. And what better way to achieve that than with rustic vintage charm? Let's start with the bed frame. A wrought iron bed, a reclaimed wood headboard, or even an antique brass frame can set the tone. Layer it with linen bedding in neutral tones. Think ivory, oatmeal, or soft sage for that effortlessly cozy vibe. Next, textiles are key. A quilt at the foot of the bed, a knitted throw casually draped over a chair, and lace curtains filtering the morning light all add layers of warmth. Don't be afraid to mix patterns. A floral pillow paired with a striped blanket can feel collected over time rather than overly designed. Lighting in the bedroom should be soft and inviting. A vintage table lamp with a fabric shade, string lights wrapped around a bedpost, or even candle sconces can create a dreamy ambience. If you have the space, a reading nook with a worn leather armchair and a stack of old books is the perfect finishing touch. Now, let's talk storage. Instead of bulky modern dressers, look for antique armoires, worn trunks at the foot of the bed, or even floating shelves with vintage baskets. These pieces add character while keeping your space clutter-free. And for the walls, a gallery of vintage frames, a weathered mirror, or a macrame wall hanging can add that final layer of personality. The goal? A bedroom that feels like a retreat, where every piece tells a story and invites you to slow down. Ready for some DIY magic? Up next, we're sharing easy rustic vintage projects you can tackle this weekend. Segment 5. Easy Rustic Vintage DIY Projects. One of the best things about rustic vintage style? You don't need a huge budget to achieve it, just a little creativity. Let's start with furniture makeovers. Have an old dresser that's seen better days? Sand it down, apply a chalk paint in a muted tone, and distress the edges for instant vintage charm. A swap of the hardware can take it from drab to farmhouse fab in minutes. Another fun project? DIY vintage signs? Grab a reclaimed wood plank, stencil on a meaningful quote or a simple "Farm Fresh Eggs" label, and sand it lightly for a weathered look. Hang it in the kitchen or entryway for a personalized touch. Bonus points if you use milk paint for an authentic aged finish. For smaller accents, try upcycling thrifted finds. An old window frame can become a photo display. A chipped teacup can turn into a succulent planter. And a bundle of dried lavender tied with twine makes the perfect rustic wall hanging. The possibilities are endless. If you're feeling ambitious, try building a floating shelf from reclaimed wood. All you need is a sanded plank, some brackets, and a drill. Style it with vintage books, ceramic vases, and a few candlesticks for a curated look. It's an easy way to add storage and charm to any room. The best part? These projects don't require expert skills, just a willingness to experiment. And remember, imperfections are welcome here. Now, let's talk where to find these treasures. Up next, thrifting like a pro. Segment 6: Thrifting and Flea Market Secrets. The thrill of the hunt is half the fun of rustic vintage design. But where do you find these one-of-a-kind pieces? Let's start with local thrift stores. Go often. Inventory changes daily. Look beyond the obvious. A chipped frame can be gold with a fresh coat of paint, and that ugly lamp might just need a new shade. Flea markets and antique fairs are treasure troves. Arrive early for the best picks, bring cash for bargaining, and keep an open mind. That rusty bread box could be a stunning bathroom shelf. That weathered ladder, perfect for hanging blankets. Always ask, what could this become? Online, Facebook Marketplace and Etsy are gold mines for vintage finds. Search keywords like distressed farmhouse or primitive, and don't overlook estate sales. They're full of hidden gems at a fraction of retail prices. Pro tip: check listings for barn finds or vintage lot for bulk deals. When thrifting, inspect items carefully. Look for solid wood, no particle board, sturdy joints, and patina that adds character, not damage that's beyond repair. And always measure your space before buying. That gorgeous hutch won't work if it's 6 inches too tall. Finally, build relationships with sellers. Let them know what you're looking for. They might just call you when that perfect piece comes in. Now, let's wrap this up with final thoughts on living beautifully with rustic vintage style. As we come to the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with this thought. The most beautiful homes aren't designed. They're discovered, piece by piece, season by season. That crack in your farmhouse table? It's proof of laughter, shared over spilled wine. The patina on your brass doorknob? A testament to generations of hands turning it, day after day. These aren't flaws. They're the fingerprints of a life well lived. I'll never forget the moment I truly embraced this philosophy. It was when I hesitated over a perfect new sofa, then chose a second-hand one instead, one with a faint ink stain on the arm. My grandfather chuckled and said, "Now it has a story before you've even told yours." That's the heart of rustic vintage living. It's not about freezing time in some idealized past, but about weaving your own thread into the tapestry. As you start or continue your own journey, remember, there are no rules here, only invitations. An invitation to repurpose that broken ladder into a bookshelf, to display your child's pottery next to your great-aunt's porcelain, to choose the chair that feels like home over the one that looks like a magazine. Your home should be a living scrapbook, not a showroom. Before you go, I'd love to hear how this conversation has inspired you. Maybe you're seeing your thrifted picture frame in a new light, or finally giving yourself permission to hang those mismatched plates. Whatever it is, share it below. Your ideas might spark someone else's aha moment. And if this video felt like a kindred spirit, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. Until then, keep looking for beauty in the unexpected. Pick up the chipped cup. Run your fingers along the grain of that old pine shelf. Listen to what these pieces whisper to you. And most importantly, live beautifully in all its imperfect, glorious, real ways. Goodbye for now, friends.